Good evening. And again, thank you all so much for coming. It has been a busy day for all of us, I'm sure. So I'm going to just jump right in. But again, thank you so much for spending time this evening with us. We do have a PowerPoint because it keeps me on track. So I'm going to pull that up just so we can make sure we cover everything in a timely manner. But again, thank you. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A option, and we will get to as many as we can. We also had some questions that were submitted at the registration. We were rushing from an event, so we pulled all the questions up till I think about 5 o'clock. So if you put your question in after 5 o'clock, if you could go on and put it in the Q&A option, that would be great. So I am Delegate Marcia Price, and I represent the 95th District. We'll talk about the change in districts, but currently I represent the 95th District. And yesterday is when the General Assembly session started. So I just want to give you a few updates and kind of let you know what's going on. So I've been serving in the House of Delegates since 2016, and I currently serve on 2 committees, Health, Welfare, and Institutions, and we deal with scope of practice for medical and mental health providers. That might be dealing with some hospital issues, what hospitals can and can't do. And then welfare is kind of like your TANF and your SNAP benefits, and institutions includes a whole variety of things, but a lot of what we do currently would include the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. So we'll talk a little bit about mental health. So that falls under that one. And then I also serve on general laws, and general laws, we talk about housing and consumer protection, the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, procurement, gambling, ABC, and of course, more recently, we've been talking about the legalization of marijuana. And so those are the 2 committees that I serve on this year. So for tonight, we have, it looks like it's longer than it really is because we'll go through some of this pretty quick, but I always like to level set and just make sure everybody understands what's a delegate, what do we do? So there's a small civics refresher in there. And then we want to definitely update you on the first 2 days of session. A lot has already happened. I want to go over my legislation and priorities, and then I have some information about the important issues that you all have submitted to me. And then I want to show you how to follow along during session. And then, of course, we'll take any questions that you may have. So baseline assumptions, this is a no judgment zone. I can see your questions. No one's going to be judging you. No question is stupid. We all come at this from different angles. If I had to come to your job today, I wouldn't know everything. So we're all working on this from different angles. I do have my Chief of Staff, Tempest Boone, on with me, and my Legislative Assistant, Cheyenne Combs. And so they're there to help me answer any questions that I may not know off the top of my head. But you have a question for a reason, so please go on and ask it. We always like to also kind of manage expectations. I think a lot of people who are newer to the process assumes that, you know, there are going to be instant changes within government. And since 2016, that has been a very hard lesson for me. But usually there's an extent of change, an extent to the amount of change that we can achieve. And usually it's over a longer period of time. So then there's cultural pressure and like protests and things that happen on the outside that helps us transform the inside, but from within, systems kind of work to kind of keep themselves going. Also, politics is personal. I hear people say, I'm not really into politics, but politics is into you, because the policy that we are enacting here in the General Assembly during our legislative session impacts probably every single facet of your life. And so it's really important that you're here tonight. So thank you again for joining me. And then also we need your voice right now. So I'm going to go over how you can make sure to share your voice during session, because no matter what your lived experience it is, it can help promote the causes that you care about most. So let's take a poll. I am going to launch the poll. If you could answer, the first one is, have you ever paid attention to the Virginia General Assembly session? Yes, not really, or never. And then, do you wish to participate in this year's session? And that will help us decide, like, you know, how we help you all participate. And then of the issues that are listed, if you could choose your top 3, I think it might let you choose 4, but we're trying to just see like what are the top 3 that folks are really, really thinking about. So we'll give you a little bit of time to fill that out. Okay, so it looks like we're diverse within the poll. We'll give it one more second. I think we're at about 60%. Okay. All right, so of the answers that we've gotten so far, about 75% of you have in some way, shape, or form looked at Session and kind of followed, and about 25% said not really. So at least you've heard of Session. So we're not starting from square one. So that's great. And then do you wish to participate in this year's? I got mostly yeses and a maybe, but obviously no nos. Okay, so that's great. We can work with maybes and of course the yeses. And then the top 3 issues I'm seeing are gun violence prevention, healthcare and mental health resources, reproductive justice, but it kind of looks like at least one person hit on each of the issues. So we will follow as many of those as we can tonight, but just know all of these issues are things that we're working on in this current session. So thank you for that. That kind of helps us see where we are in our conversations. And so I just want to do a pop quiz real quick. And you don't have to answer, but just making sure people understand like how many Virginia delegates there are and what do we do. So in the Virginia General Legislative Session, General Assembly Legislative Session, there are 100 delegates and 40 senators, and all 140 of us come to Richmond at the Capitol, pictured there. And this is where we meet in committees and we present bills. We vote on bills, like I said, that deal with kind of like every single part of your life. Part of that is also the budget, and the budget is how we are spending your tax dollars. Now, whether you were employed or on retirement, or you might be in high school and don't have a job yet, everybody pays taxes because you might pay sales tax, retail tax, all of that. So everybody's a taxpayer, really. So we're deciding how to use your money that you give us and to make sure that we are spending your money in the ways that you see as priorities. We also elect judges. A lot of people don't know that, but the people that sit on the benches in Virginia, the General Assembly chooses, including the Supreme Court. And we confirm the governor's appointees. And so that's kind of what we do. Again, with the special elections that have occurred, there are all 100 members of the House of Delegates and currently 39 members of the Senate, but Senator-elect Aaron Rouse in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, he won his election. The Senate waits for election results to be certified by the Department of Elections. So that should happen, I think, by next Friday, and then he can take his seat. But he's been up there. So you might see some of the votes that are coming in at 39 if they take floor votes before that. This is a website that I would love for you to write down because I saw the registration and people have registered from all over the Commonwealth to attend this evening. You are welcome. I appreciate you for being here, but I do want to make sure that everybody knows who their own delegate is. And so if you go to this website, who'smy.virginiageneralassembly.gov, you can type in your address right here and then click Find Now. And then when you do that, there'll be a map that pops up. It'll let you know that Senator Warner is one of your senators, Senator Kane is one of your United States senators, who your congressional representative is. So if you're in Hampton or Newport News, it would be Congressman Scott. And then it also lets you know your state senator and your delegate. So the interesting part about right now is this is the last year that members of the General Assembly will represent the districts that were drawn based on the previous census in 2010. So in 2020, we had another census through the pandemic, and then 2021, 2022 is when the redistricting process, it dragged on a bit, but they finalized the maps. So when I was saying that I currently represent the 95th district, that is in fact true. But on the map, you'll see that you can click another button that says 2023 election, and that is in November, all members of the General Assembly, all of the seats will be up for election. Those will be with the new districts. So if you looked up and you've seen that you live in the 85th district, but you know I'm your delegate, that means that it's the 85th for the next election. You are currently still in the 95th. It gets a little tricky, but this website has all of that information. And of course, if you ever have any questions on that, let me know. So some people are like, well, what do y'all talk about up there? Here are a couple of different things. Now, we have 14 committees that the bills are split into, usually by subject matter, but it can be education, mental health, criminal justice reform, what judges are allowed to do and not allowed to do, what the prison and jail systems look like, what reentry or rehabilitation really looks like. That's within criminal justice reform. Civil rights usually includes voting rights, but because I work in voting rights, I separated it out. But that might be allowing folks to love who they love and be in their own relationships. A lot of the anti-discrimination bills will come up under civil rights to make sure that housing and employment are fair and not discriminatory. And then, like I said, I've been working in the area of voting rights, making sure that everyone who wants to cast their ballot has the opportunity to do so. Environmental justice is making sure that we all have access to clean air, clean water, and that we're taking care of our climate and passing on a healthy earth to the next generations. And then economic justice might be livable wages, making sure that people can have one job and be able to meet their needs, be able to afford to live in the areas where they live, you know, where they work, and especially like our teachers and folks that are really doing community work, make sure they can afford to live there. Economic justice is also part of taxation and fair taxation. And so we'll get into that with some of the bills that I am working on. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that advocacy matters. And advocacy is really just a public statement of something that you support. And so for the purposes here, that can look like you speaking or emailing legislators about a bill or an issue that you care about during our subcommittee meetings, sharing your story and how the bill would impact you. And so advocacy sometimes sounds like this big word and that like a whole bunch of people have to do it, but it can really be an individual action that you're taking for something that that matters to you. So this is what it actually looks like. This is, good evening. This is this was pre-pandemic, so I wanna say maybe 2019. I was presenting a bill, and this is a usual committee room. And so you'll have all kinds of folks in there. And then people can actually come up during the meeting and speak in favor of a bill. So I was presenting this bill on reproductive health, and all of those people that are in line were coming to say that they support it. And so it's as easy as that. You can send an email, you can make a phone call. So we'll go over how some of that works. But I just want you to see, like, it's a regular room. It just has chairs. Like, it's not scary. It actually is, in my opinion, quite fun, but it's easy to do. And we'll get into a little bit more about what statements should include. So like I said, yesterday, the Virginia General Assembly 2023 session kicked off. And so just going back to recap, 100 delegates, 40 senators. Session is when the legislative branch of government at the state level comes and we meet at our designated time to pass bills. The length of the session can vary based off odd and even numbers, but every year it's at least 30 days. But we're in a short session in an odd number year, and so it's 45 days. So when you're looking at the calendar and you start at January 11th, it is 45 calendar days. So weekends do count in that 45 days. So it's a few days less than 45 for us to actually speak. And sessions usually happen between January, February, and March. I know last year you heard that we were still in session. That was a special session, but we're now in regular session. So another website that I want you all to take note of is lis.virginia.gov. This is really important because every single piece of legislation that I'm going to talk about, every single piece of legislation that you might have a question about, all of that is going to be housed in this website. So once you type in lis.virginia.gov, this is the homepage. One thing that's really important is to make sure whenever you're looking at this, that you are on the correct session. If you wanted to look for a bill that we passed last year, you would need, you would need to click on other sessions in order to click on 2022. And then for this session, of course, is 2023. So if you, let's say you know a bill number, you can click Bills and Resolutions, type in HB 1650, and then it'll pull it up. But if you don't know a bill number, but you know the member that's carrying it, you can click General Assembly Members, and you can look at all of the bills that we're doing based off our name. If you're not sure about that, but you know it's probably an elections bill and it went to privileges and elections, you can click on Standing Committees and look at all of the bills by committee. You can look up the state budget and the different amendments that we're proposing. And then this tool is kind of fun. It's called Lobbyist in a Box. And if you fill out, I think you can get 5 free ones there. That lets you get an email anytime you get an update or there's been action on one of the bills that you are following. So say, for instance, all of the bills have been, let's say that all the bills have been introduced and you're waiting to see when a bill is going to be heard by a subcommittee. If you type that in for the 5 free ones, once that bill is up for subcommittee or has been referred to a subcommittee or has been voted on, you'll get emails on those updates. You can also click on Virginia General Assembly up here to learn more about members, to learn more about the Capitol, to learn more about legislative government. And then, you know, you can just toggle between the two. Also, meetings are important because you can see, like, if you looked up today, you would see all of the meetings that happened, and you can, you know, kind of plan ahead. Also, House video and Senate video. There you can see previous floor sessions and committee meetings, and you can also click on things to watch live as they're happening in the moment. I would suggest everybody watch at least a previous or current session, just so you know kind of like what it looks like, all these things that I'm talking about, maybe a committee meeting and a floor session. So like I was saying, during session, these are kind of your opportunities to advocate as a tax-paying resident. You are entitled to share your opinion with those of us that are in representative government. These are probably the easiest and best ways during session. I want to give you a picture, right? So I have been going since about 7:30 today, because this morning I had to do some research and write some remarks for some bills. And I'm still here at 8. We'll probably be here, you know, a little longer after the Zoom. But in that, it is very, very fast-paced. Things go quick. We had to go from session. We only had a half an hour from session to get to the subcommittee meeting. And then from there, I might have another meeting after that. I might be running between buildings. And so it is not a flex to say, like, if you call Tempest and say, I want to meet with the delegate, it's not a flex to be like, all right, you have 10 minutes. Our meetings are 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because we are meeting with hundreds of people. So these are not long, drawn out conversations about possible legislation for one day. That's what we do after session in the interim. These are, Delegate Price, I want you to vote yes or no on this specific bill because it's important to me. Or you going to a committee meeting and saying things, there might be public hearings, a town hall like this interface here. You can call us. Most offices have office hours. I know we do a lot of virtual office hours. Lobby visits are also when organizations get together and come and meet with lots of legislators. You can write letters. We open every single piece of mail. Emails, we read every single email. And then sometimes members will send out surveys. Now, the thing about social media, just to be very honest, we don't necessarily have time to keep up with social media messages, but you can definitely follow our social media to keep up with announcements and updates or videos. I like to go live every time that we're at recess so that people can kind of get caught up. So my Instagram has that, but we are on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We have a Flickr page, a YouTube channel. So we try to be very accessible in that way. So then here's a potential template for when you're trying to communicate with us. And this works not just with me, but this is a way that you can look at a bill and communicate what it is you're trying to say easily to the committee members or to your delegate, if I'm not your delegate. But basically it's, hi, your name, the city or district that you live in, and then the issue area. Like, I care a lot about criminal justice reform. Usually it helps for us to know why you care or how it impacts you. A lot of people will send us charts and facts and very cold, stark information. We read it, but it's also really good to hear about the stories that people bring to certain information. So I've gotten bills about the automatic restoration of rights from those that have been formerly incarcerated. And they're talking about how they've done their time. And now it's time for them to be able to participate in the enterprise of voting. And they talk about what it would mean for them to feel like a true citizen to get this right back. That is more impactful sometimes than just saying, this is how many people need to have their rights restored, or, this is the map of the number of people that need to have their rights restored. Just hearing that story. So then also after you tell, what the problem is or why it impacts you, offer a solution. And so I am formerly incarcerated. I would like to get my voting rights back. That's why I really would like, the support of House Joint Resolution 123, which would create an automatic voting process, automatic voting restoration process. And so you can talk about whatever the solution is. And then at the end, you want to end with a firm, hard ask. You're not just professing your love for a bill, you're communicating with us because you want us to do something. So you should really end it with like, will you support this budget amendment, or will you support this bill? Or if you're writing for us to not support something, will you vote no? And that really makes us tell you like where we are on something or how we're thinking about it. I think that's a really important thing. Other than just telling us how you feel, we have the opportunity and kind of the accountability to be able to answer how we're planning on voting or what we feel on it too. So if you go to LIS and you see my page, these are some of the bills that I'm working on. And they haven't all dropped. We have we have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. To submit all of our legislation, but these are some of the ones that I've been working on. I tried to get fancy and so when it zoomed, it kind of cut off of you, but I'll run through them. So today I'll tell you a little bit more about this bill because it was actually up in subcommittee, but we're trying to make sure that localities can help tenants fight back against slumlords. With 1651, we're trying to make sure that if you're online applying for a place to stay and 5 other people have applied for the same space, that you don't waste your money on a non-refundable application fee for an apartment you were never going to get, right? And then for House Bill 1652, that would extend the pay or quit period for tenants from 5 days to 14 days. And that could give someone a chance to get to their next check or to scrape something together that would help them be able to pay their rent. We were finding that people were being evicted for like $100, $200, $300. And if they had just had time to get to that next Friday, they would have been able to pay it. So that is what that's trying to help. You'll hear a lot of folks talk about tax rebates and the fact that the state has a lot of money, so it should go back to the taxpayers. But a lot of the other proposals are giving that refund or rebate back to people that already make the most money. What I'm carrying is House Bill 1653, which is the Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC. And last year we increased it from 0 to 15%, which has almost doubled the amount that people can get back. Well, we're trying to take it a little bit further to 20%. If everybody else is going to get even more tax relief, then the low and moderate income people should as well. In House Bill 1654, Congressman Scott got a federal Civilians Death in Custody Reporting Act, but unfortunately, it has not been funded or properly implemented on the federal level. We think that from the moment you might be pulled over from that interaction with a law enforcement officer, all the way to if someone ends up incarcerated, that any death that happens within those interactions should be accessible and be able to be studied so that we can keep a track on, what's happening and monitor it and make sure that we're taking care of the people that we're supposed to be protecting. House Bill 1655 basically says that while someone is incarcerated, if they owe money on fees and fines, that you cannot charge collection fees while they're incarcerated. It sounds pretty like, you would take it for granted that you thought that that's what was the case. We're trying to make that so because we heard from some constituents. Unfortunately, Newport News has been in the news again for gun violence with the tragedy that happened at Rich Neck Elementary. We have been fighting for years to get common sense gun safety legislation. In 2020 and 2021, we got a lot done, but unfortunately, we are not at the point where we can say we are preventing gun violence. One of the things that a lot of people that don't live in areas that are highly impacted by gun violence, they don't even understand that it's not just the one shooting and the one person, who may have been affected by it. The effects radiate throughout our communities. And so it might be the fact that residents might be getting used to the sound of gunfire. Like nobody should live in a situation where they're getting used to hearing guns being shot, right? And so the mental, emotional, physical, health, and economic impact of gun violence needs to be measured. And I think that would help us understand the magnitude of the issue. So JLARC is a commission that does in-depth studies and gives recommendations for legislative fixes. And so we're just asking for JLARC to look at gun violence and to make sure that we really understand what a big problem it is. I'm working with some high school students who want to make sure that Virginia is intentionally reaching out to historically underrepresented students to make sure that they also know about opportunities with STEM, knowing that a lot of the future jobs are really STEM heavy, making sure that people at an early age know what those jobs are, know what the training is that they need to have. And so then it's been great working with the students because they know what they want. It's weird with 1658, this is kind of like wonky, but let's say there's a nurse and a doctor working together. The code says, Virginia code says, what the doctor can do, what the nurse can do, and that's called scope of practice. As years progress and as the amount of and types of education different jobs have, it may come a time for a conversation where we adjust the scope of practice and where, a nurse might be able to do more, a nurse practitioner might be able to do more. Those conversations are excruciatingly painful for those of us that are not in the medical field. We believe the doctors, we believe the nurses, but sometimes the information conflicts. And so this would just take it out of the mediation of the compromise, take it out of legislators' hands and put it back into the hands of doctors and nurses on the boards that regulate them, and then give it back to us for recommendation. And then if you were following some of the work that I did we were in person. So in 2020, I had then a House Bill 277 that basically said, okay, the Virginia Code said community service before and after incarceration could be counted towards fees and fines. We implemented a system where community service while incarcerated could also count. So it was before, during, and after. Great progress, unfortunately, between DOC, judges, defense attorneys not knowing about it, defendants not knowing about it. It is not being offered as widely as the intended bill. So we've been working for the last 2 years to make sure that that all of the work that is performed while incarcerated, no matter what type of work it is, can count towards fees and fines, but also count towards fees and fines in a fair way. So that is that. I know I have a few more, but let me think. I will send you all a follow-up email that has some of the ones that we're going to drop tomorrow. There is a proposed constitutional amendment. Right now, there are only certain categories of people that can be offered property tax exemptions. We want to add low-income families to that, but it takes a constitutional amendment. So we're putting in that proposal. It would have to pass twice, and then it would have to pass twice and then go to the voters to approve. But this is how the process starts. And Tempest is amazing. She just reminded me of the other two. We're working with Newport News Public School Systems to find a mechanism for more funding for school construction. As you know, yes, we gave a historic amount. I think it was like $200 million for school construction in the last budget. However, if you talk to the school board, you talk to the superintendent, Newport News alone could probably use a third of that, but we know we're not going to get a third of that. So what are we going to do? Because we can't be in a situation where, you know, the school building is not functioning, so it's impacting students' learning. And then again, even prior to the shooting at Rich Neck, we had been talking about up here, okay, if the Republicans won't let us pass any legislation that deals with the actual guns that are a problem within gun violence, what are some other creative ways that we can still make progress on? And a lot of people keep talking about mental health, and I want to make a very important distinction. There are people that have mental health concerns, diagnosable mental health concerns, where they might go to the Newport News and Hampton Community Services Board. They might be at a facility where they're getting inpatient treatment. That population is actually 3 times more likely to be harmed by a firearm than to harm someone else with a firearm. So that's one wing of when we're talking about mental health and improving the facilities, improving the wait times that people have in order to find beds when they're having crisis. That is one situation. I think when it comes to gun violence, we are at a point where something as baffling as daytime shootouts, domestic violence, children with guns, our minds can't fathom it. So we just say, oh, it's mental health. And I think that allows for people that don't really want to do anything about gun violence to just say, okay, well, we did something, we gave money to mental health. That's actually 2 different things. But I think one thing that strikes a chord in the middle is I remember back at Hines Middle School, I had peer mediation training, and we were taught about conflict resolution. We were taught about self-esteem, body image. There were all of these things that we were taught, whether it was from the school counselor or it was a unit in one of my classes. I distinctly remember the wonderful people that were a part of my life that taught me that. Well, when I inquired about where that is in education, it is very spotty around the Commonwealth. Who is offering that education? Northern Virginia was. Hampton Roads, not so much. Richmond, not so much. Maybe one school does it, but this is not a Commonwealth-wide thing. And whether your community is experiencing gun violence or whether your community is experiencing high rates of self-harm amongst our teenagers, we need to really put mental health tools and mental health strategies into our classrooms. And so I'm working with Senator Spruill on that bill. That one hasn't dropped yet, but it should be dropping soon. And then after that, I think I have 2 more spots, but I have more ideas than 2 spots. So we're deciding tomorrow by the deadline what those other 2 bills would be. Okay, so moving to day 1. So day 1 was jam-packed, as most of our days are. First, we started out with the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus press conference. You may have seen coverage of that in the news. We talked about housing, criminal justice reform, education. I was able to offer the work that we're doing, continued work we're doing within voting rights. And then during that, I did field a question about the shooting in Newport News that basically challenged my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to work with us, because it is not okay for us to have to be talking about a first grader and a firearm. And luckily the teacher looks like she's going to survive, but the children that were in the school, the children around the city that are having to hear that, there are youth that I've talked to in Richmond and their parents heard about what happened and they're scared. Like, our children should feel safe in their schools and communities. And so we want to work toward that. Then we took attendance for our first day. And most folks were there. The special elections that I mentioned about, Delegate Holly Siebold, we welcomed her to the Democratic side from Northern Virginia, as former Delegate Keem went on to the Biden-Harris administration. So that's what a swearing in looks like in the chamber. And then on my way to the chamber, I met the great folks of SEIU who work really hard on worker protection and fair wages. And so they let me take a picture with them on the way into the Capitol. So that was really cool. We also heard from the governor. Every year we hear from the governor of at that time on the State of the Commonwealth address. In the follow-up email, I can give you a link to watch all of this. We definitely have some philosophical differences. That's an understatement of the year. But another thing that I am really worried about is the confidence and fortitude with which incorrect and false information is being given. We can disagree on how we feel about something, but it is at an alarming rate the amount of information that is not true that is being proliferated. And so I think whether it's me, anything that I've said tonight, anything I will say, whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, you all have to do your homework and you have to see, where do our words and our actions match and not match? And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot that's not aligned. And so if I say we want to do tax relief for all Virginians, but my proposals leave out 600,000 low and moderate income families, my actions and my words are not matching. If I say I want all of history to be taught, but I'm actively working to keep Black history and Black, Brown, and Indigenous history out of the schools, that does not match. If I say I support education, but the proposals I'm putting forth actually would undermine education, that does not match. And if I say I'm for violence prevention, but I am putting forward the failed policies of the Reagan and Bush administrations of mass incarceration of Black and Brown people, we have seen that exponential growth in overdoses, exponential growth in gun violence deaths. Hiring more prosecutors is not violence prevention, but investing in the community organizations doing the work of prevention, that is. And so that's where I stand on that. One thing I think we all do agree on is the influx of money that has to go into our mental health care system. We are letting people down right now with the folks that work at the facilities aren't safe, the patients aren't safe. The way that our referrals are working may not be as efficient when people are in crisis. We need more things like the care unit that we have in Newport News, where, social workers and mental health workers go out to mental health crises along with law enforcement, but not law enforcement being the main escalating force versus de-escalating force. There's a lot that we need to do. And I do believe that there is bipartisan support for that. So all is not lost in the partisanship. I am hopeful that we'll get some things done. Like I was telling y'all, we are fully in session. So today we had a health, welfare, and institutions committee meeting this morning. Then we went to our floor session. And then right after that, even though I sit on general laws, I have to present the bills that go before general laws that I'm carrying. So that House Bill 1650 that I showed you off of my list, it came up today. And we told them about the CLOF situation. House Bill 1650 would have empowered Newport News to have done way more before it got to the point of right now, the only two options they had were to take the landlord to court and fine him, but it would have been less than the cost of fixes and the tenants would not have gotten the fixes that they needed, or condemn the building. And so that's how the building ended up being condemned. A third option would have been for the city to sue for the actual fixes. Now, we've gotten to that point with the Seaview situation, but that is because they had fire code violations. We are in a sick world right now where if Seaview's elevators worked and if their sprinkler system worked and if the boiler was not a fire hazard, all of the other issues would not be getting fixed. And that's a problem because you shouldn't have just a sprinkler system, just elevators, and just a good boiler. You should also be living free of infestation, mold, trash, like everything that was going on that really made a lot of the units inhabitable. That is still in the court case. Luckily, there is a law office in Newport News that we matched up with, and they're representing about, I think they said close to 100, maybe 60, forgot the number, but a ton of the residents pro bono. But it shouldn't have to be like that. The city should have been able to step in and do more. So that's what House Bill 1650 would do. This shows you the vote. It did pass out of subcommittee 5-3. It's a little weird because it passed out in the same form out of this same subcommittee last year uncontested, but we'll see what happens. It passed out of the House last year with bipartisan support. It passed out of the Senate last year with bipartisan support, but then unfortunately it was vetoed by the governor with a justification statement that I think was conflating the building code and the fire code, which led to an unfactual statement of why the bill was vetoed. And we did address that in the subcommittee meeting today. I'll send you a link so that you can watch that to see what it looks like. We also had in-person testimony from some of the folks that represent the 52 organizations that support this. We had folks from the realtor side, the landlord side, from the tenant side, but there's also the option of virtual testifying. And we had Mr. Shipman speak up on behalf of residents in Richmond. And so it really is this easy. It's a room like this. You walk up, you say your piece, or you get online and say your piece. So I just don't want you to feel like it's inaccessible. Some of the other issues that you all brought up in your registration, again, I pulled the ones up until about 5:30 before we had to leave for an event, but responsible tax relief, just like we talked about with the EITC. Excuse me, the other part about having a lot of money, right? So Republicans will say there's a lot of money because we overtaxed and we should give all the money back. But conventional wisdom would also say if you taxed and there's still need, our schools, our roads, our enforcement, like whatever that is, if we can't pay all of our bills to the level where they need to be paid, that's not extra money. We just talked about the health system. Like we need hundreds of millions of dollars for that. So while I do believe that everybody needs to get some relief from inflation, it needs to be done in a responsible way where instead of you getting like $20 back, if everybody put that $20 toward education, we would be able to get even further, pay our teachers more, keep our children safe. So it's really important to look at the big picture, not just the promise of money to you and thinking that it's really just that short-sighted. Of course, we are working to protect reproductive health care with the election of Senator-elect Aaron Rouse. That looks like it's going to really be protected, and that, you know, people with the capability of pregnancy are going to be able to have the bodily autonomy they deserve here in the Commonwealth. Mental health, we talked about that. Childhood hunger, we have made significant strides on childhood hunger. It used to be that lunches were being snatched from kids whose families couldn't afford them. We've made significant strides. Delegate Rome from Manassas has been at the forefront of that. And some of the local Hampton and Newport News organizations are working with her. It is illegal now to tell a child that they don't have enough funds. You have to talk directly to the parent like you should. You cannot put stickers on them or anything that denotes that they don't have enough money. You cannot make them do chores in order to work off the money. Guys, in order for us to have had a bill for this, it means that these things were happening in our schools, and that's just unacceptable. But we made that significant strides, and we're still working on making sure, honestly, that more kids who are in families that are low to moderate income have access to free meals. You cannot expect excellence in a school from hungry children. So that's important. Voting rights, of course, trying to protect the historic gains we made. We went from 49th as in second hardest state to vote in to now we're the 11th easiest state for voting. And that is because of the work that we did in 2020 and 2021, including the Voting Rights Act of Virginia that I carried. We want to protect that progress. you all could vote early for 45 days without having to tell why. We want to keep those options open for you. Prison reform, one of the things that I'm really excited about is working toward making sure that DOC, the Department of Corrections, has oversight, because now families of those that are on the inside, if they're experiencing an issue, they get punted around to different organizations if they ever do get a response. And so it is just abysmal for folks who are working through the system to make sure that their loved one is being taken care of while they're in custody. And so we want to make sure that things are being done in good and healthy ways. And we've had deaths in jails, deaths in prison, and that's just unconscionable. And so we want to make sure that there's oversight for that you all know exactly where you can go for answers, who to talk to, who's accountable for what, establishing that structure. Lots going on in education. We're having big debates about charter schools, lab schools, or fully funding public schools. So stay tuned for more on that. And then I know I have a specific constituent who's really, really interested in this, but we are going to have the conversation about medical aid in dying, and what does dying with dignity mean, especially when you have a terminal disease and you're experiencing pain beyond belief. What is it that family members and medical providers can do to honor people's wishes at the end of their journey. And then we had a couple of constituents inquire about barrier crimes. When the Democrats were in control of the House, I was on the Barrier Crimes and Background Checks Committee. I was vice chair with Senator Edwards, and we came up over, gosh, was it a year? It felt like a year of research, of talking to people that had they had a past history within the criminal justice system. And in the code right now, there are like 41 crimes that if you committed that ever, you cannot be hired by the mental health and healthcare fields. It does not even matter if you have not recidivated in 20 years, that barrier crime is still in place. What we were trying to do, because we're at a workforce shortage in so many of these areas, was say, okay, we understand violent crimes. We understand identity theft, get that. But if someone had a non-violent weed charge, marijuana charge 20 years ago, and they're trying to help someone in a field where we need people, like that's irresponsible of us to keep people out of the system who would be great. The other thing that this impacts is peer counselors. Peer counselors are people who have had lived experience in the system with substance use disorder. They are the very ones that can help people who are going through that, because they know what they've been through and help them change their trajectory. But if you've had a history, you can't be hired by certain organizations, even though you're the best people for the job. So we're trying to claw away at that. I carried the bill last year. It did not pass the Republican House. There's just this idea that if you've ever made a mistake in your life, you're a bad person. And we know that's not true. Those of us that have Christian beliefs, we know that second chances are supposed to be a part of life. So we're just trying to find where we can maybe strike a balance so that we can get the workforce up. We can give people second chances. We can have them have, meaningful jobs that pay really good, salaries and all of that. But that's probably to be continued, because there are just so many who are against that, but we're going to continue to keep fighting for it. If you have an additional question about another issue, please drop that in the question and answers. I'm about to wrap up and get to the question and answers. But before I do that, just want to let you know how my team and I can support you. If you want to schedule a visit coming up, we can let you know the best place to park. If you want to stay overnight, we can tell you about the good hotels, how to walk to the Capitol, how to get to the building, how to get to the Pocahontas building, how to get around the building. We can just give you some of the best practices so that you have a meaningful and productive visit. Our floor sessions are Monday through Friday, usually at 12 noon. Sometimes we go in a little bit early on Fridays, but we can also have virtual updates or in-person updates. If you're following specific bills and you're like, I know a lot of people that would like an update on this, we can do that for you. We can, of course, answer specific legislative questions. If you're following a bill and there's a word, let's say it got left on the table and you're like, what does that mean? We can let you know that that means the bill's not going to pass. We can just kind of help make this process more accessible for you, because there are a lot of words that aren't used in everyday language that are really going on up here. And then, of course, we can continue our constituent services where we're connecting you with community resources. And then after session, we can brainstorm solutions to possible problems for future legislation. We will include all of our contact information in the follow-up email, but here it is. I'll leave it up for a little bit, but I just want to check and see. Okay, so the first one says Valley Justice Coalition is interested in your House Bill 1654. Could you discuss your bill a bit? And that was the one for the civilian death in custody. Basically, from the moment I might be pulled over at a traffic stop to the moment I might be incarcerated, if something happens to me and I die, that should be part of a report that is accessible for the entire Commonwealth. And if there are certain trends, we need to be able to address it. If there are certain issues, we need to be able to address it. And so that's what the importance of that bill is. Ms. Turner, if you need more information on that, I can definitely get you more information. But that's what that bill is about. Another comment came in. Sorry, trying to make sure I'm getting all the comments. Okay, so another one says, House Bill 277 has been amazing for some and a big headache for some. So again, if you are in court and you're being sentenced and your defense attorney knows about it or you know about it, and community service being counted toward your fees and fines is a part of your order, then yes, House Bill 277 is amazing for you. If you're going to jail or if you're going to some DOC facilities. If not all of those things are in place at the same time, you're not getting access to the rights that should be yours from the set because of the law. And so that's what we're trying to fix. And so Ms. Ross, you've been an amazing champion for those that are on the inside. We are going to continue to work on this until we get it passed. And the new one is House Bill 2159, where we're trying to make that process more fair. Okay, just for clarity, is House Bill 2159 a passed bill, or are we trying to advocate for its pass? Thank you for the clarification. All of the bills that I discussed today are bills that are being introduced. They have not passed yet. We have not taken any floor votes in the House or the Senate yet because our committee work is just getting started. So a bill has in the House, the bill usually goes through a subcommittee, then it goes through the committee. If it passes out of there, it goes to the floor. Then if it passes from the House floor, it goes to the Senate committee. Then it goes to the Senate floor, and then from the Senate floor, it goes to the governor. All of the bills that we're discussing have to go through that long journey in 45 days. So when you're going to LIS and you click on the link for the bill, you will be able to see where it is in the process. If it's in committee, when it will be heard, if it's been voted on, who voted which way for it. That's how you keep up with that. And then again, if you have any questions on that, we can let you know. Should individuals lobby for bills that are being heard within that week? Is there a general rule? I would say don't wait. People waited and had no idea that we were going to have committee meetings as soon as yesterday. Like some of the folks that wanted to speak on some of the housing bills had no clue it was going to go today. So I would say actually don't wait. Be very specific with your ask and the bill number if you have it. And then that way, at least for my office, we take account for it. Now, what I do think is a general rule is if you are interested in a bill passing, let's say, for instance, there's an education bill that you're really, really excited about. Yes. And let's say I'm your delegate. Yes, you can absolutely send me a letter that says I support House Bill, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not on the education committee. There is a subcommittee and a committee that will talk about that bill and vote about that bill before it comes to me on the floor. So the general rule would be to target the people who will see the bill and work with it along the process. Call and email the people in the subcommittee. If it passes out of subcommittee, then, advocate to the rest of the people on full committee. Then once it gets out of full committee, everybody, all 100 people will have a chance to talk about it. And then once it moves on the Senate, and then if there's a Senate bill and a House bill, then that way you can follow it, both ways. But I would go on and definitely get your advocacy out there and not wait, because you really do not know when a bill might come up. I think, let's see, for the House, I think they tried to give us 24 hours notice, right? We found out yesterday that House Bill 1650 was coming up. We had found out the same day that, that one of our Senate bills was going to be heard. That morning, we found out that it was going to be heard in the afternoon. So there's not always a lot of lead time. Thank you for the compliment, Ms. Christian. I love the work that you're doing at the Community Services Board. And we are, like I said, we're trying to fight for y'all to get more resources. And then any support or revamping for House Bill 1737, which expired last year. If you will give me just 1 second, I will look that up, because I have not memorized all of the bills. So I'm at LIS. Oh, I could do this so you guys can see me use LIS. Get into it. All right, so we're at LIS, and this is the 2023 session. So I'm going to go over here because they said last year. I'm going to click sessions and I'm going to click 2022. I'm then going, because I have a bill number, I'm going to click bills and resolutions. You can look up the bills based off all of these different topics. But if you know the bill number, you just click it here. And it was House Bill 1737. So then I go here. Wait, was it last year or was it this year? If you could put a clarifying comment in the chat, I'm going to check for this year just to see if this one. Okay, so it's this year. Optometry reorganizes courses. Regulating. Okay. I have not heard more about this bill. If it's just technical requirements, if it's, so when you get on the page, you can also click the PDF here. So this is everything about the bill. So this is who the patron is that put it in. You can click here to see the patrons. If there were a lot of people that signed on to it, it would be listed there. And then here's a synopsis. I have had a synopsis that was not exactly accurate. So you want to read more than just the summary. So then you come down here and you can see the full text of the bill. You want to click on the date that is the most recent, because sometimes things go through amendments. This one hasn't had any amendments. And so we're going to click on PDF, and then the bill pops up. When you're looking at a bill, the regular text is current code. The strike through is what we're either taking out of the code or trying to change. And then the italicized text is what we're trying to add back into the code. So at the top of this, you'll see Virginia being crossed out and the Commonwealth being added in. Those are the technical adjustments. Virginia and the Commonwealth are the same thing, but we're moving to saying the Commonwealth in the code. So then you scroll down and you're like, here's something. Number 3 is new text. And so it says any student, intern, or trainee in optometry who is performing optometric services under the, I do not have my glasses on, under the direct supervision of a licensed optometrist or ophthalmologist as part of a course of study at an accredited institution of higher learning. So it looks like these folks would be added into the group of exemptions. And so that's what I think a lot of the bill does. You're seeing that there's more italicized language that would add folks in. So this bill would, let's see, it's going to health, welfare, and institutions. One thing that's missing from this is the subcommittee that it's going to. And so you'll want to stay tuned to see which of the health, welfare, and institutions subcommittees it will be going to. And then you can see all of the members, like when you're saying, oh, well, who should I contact? Because this bill is going to HWI. Everyone is listed right here. And then these are the subcommittees, and then you can click and see like what bills have been sent there. At this time, no legislation has been sent to the subcommittees for the HWI subcommittees, but there have been for some of the others. And then you can see, okay, referred means they voted it out to either another committee or to the floor. If it's still in committee, it'll be listed here. Which it would be listed here because these are all of the bills that are coming thus far before HWI. And then if it's been put in a subcommittee, you would go there. I'm sorry, referred is referring it from introduction into the committee, and then reported out are the ones that have passed out. Sometimes a bill might be continued to the next year. That gives us a little bit of time. Let's say there was a few changes that we needed to make and we couldn't do it right in the meeting. A bill might be continued to the next year, and then failed means it did not get enough votes to get out of the committee. Fun fact, a bill is not dead in a committee until it fails all the way through crossover. And that's when all of the House bills have to cross over to the Senate and all of the Senate bills have to cross over to the House. So that is how you use the website. I will have to look into this House Bill 1737 a little bit more. I don't want to say I'm for it or against it without having read it intently and gotten all of my questions. But if you're advocating for it, would love to hear that in the form of a call or an email, especially your rationale for why you are supporting it. That would definitely help me, but I'm sure the optometrists and ophthalmologists will probably come see me and talk to me about what they think should or should not happen. That's probably one of those bills, if it deals with the scope of practice that my bill would deal with, that it should go to ophthalmologists and optometrists first for recommendations before coming to me. So that shows you an example of that. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any chance House Bill 825 from 2022 will be revived this year? Thank you all for your patience. I think this is really great for me to be able to do this in real time. I'm going to look that up now. Okay, so that, sorry, that's my bill. That was the Firearm Prevention and Intervention Center. Okay, so two things happened within gun violence in the bills and the legislature. The bill did not pass, but within the budget, there is money for the intent of the bill. But the money went directly to the localities to give out to community organizations. So say, for instance, we fought and we got $13 million for gun violence prevention. And some of that was, before that was ARPA funding. Some of it was CARES Act funding. So Newport News got $500,000 and $300,000, and then an additional set from that. They were able to match the funds and give maybe 1-point-something million to 19 organizations in Newport News that are doing the work. Like, that's how it works. So even though we didn't get the center established and we're still fighting for it, I just think it's a line in the sand for the Republicans that it just will not pass while they're in the majority. We are still trying to get the substance of the bill done in real life. Now, this is why you have to follow things all the way through. I said $13 million for gun violence prevention. A lot of people are like, oh, great. Some of it went to community groups, but then some of the millions was taken out of gun violence prevention and given to the Attorney General to hire more prosecutors. That is a knee-jerk reaction that, again, in 1989, when George Bush was starting the increased prosecutors that led to mass incarceration of Black and brown people, it does not prevent crime. what prevents crime is bettering people's lives and giving them an alternative trajectory than gang violence, getting guns out of the hands of people that either won't keep them safe or would harm somebody with it. And so that is what I'm saying. Please pay attention. They called something Operation Ceasefire. If you go look up Operation Ceasefire in Boston and these other states, it is a multi-year process of community organizations, churches, business leaders, law enforcement, legislators. It is a whole comprehensive strategy of prevention, intervention, enforcement, and reentry. In Virginia, they gave it that name, but only dealt with not prevention, not intervention, not reentry, just enforcement. We cannot arrest our way out of the problem we are in. Even law enforcement will tell you that. So just giving money to law enforcement and to prosecutors is not going to be prevention. So I definitely appreciate the question. We are fighting the senators, Senator McClellan, Senator Barker, Senator Howe, Senator Locke, really fighting on that from the Senate side. And then you have, the entire Democratic caucus of the House that supported the legislation last year. So that would be one that you could definitely reach out to the Public Safety Committee and the Appropriations Committee to say, hey, we want something done in our community that will not further ravage our community with mass incarceration, but actually prevent the violence. So thank you for that question. Yeah, so it reduced the number of years nurse practitioners had to practice without a written practice agreement. I know that there are nurse practitioner bills coming. I'm not sure that there's an appetite for that part of it, but I do think that there was a provision adding nurse practitioners to the full scope of telemedicine. I know we worked on removing the requirement of that extra malpractice insurance that you guys had to have. Worked on that with Delegate Dawn Adams last year, but that is to be determined. Please email me if that's something that you're interested in as we're going through the bills this weekend before Health, Welfare, and Institutions meeting on Tuesday. I will have a better idea of the bills that are there. And yes, during COVID, it was reduced and it didn't, I'm not sure where we landed, but if you look at the conversation, I'll get the bill number and I'll pull up if you email me, I can pull up the meeting and show you the video if you didn't watch it last year. So you can get a sense of how the conversation is going and what some of the delegates are feeling, what might be some, reticence to it, and what the arguments are on both sides. So that is all of the questions that I've gotten. I think I wasn't within an hour, but close. But I really appreciate everyone for tuning in. We are recording this, so we will have a link to this. And in case I was talking too fast, we'll have a link to this in the follow-up email. We're actually going to send up the follow-up email to everyone that registered, not just those that could make it, because I know some folks let me know that, school homework and all of that was getting in the way. But if there's anything else that you need from us, Tempest and Cheyenne and Morgan and I are here really to serve you. And so we want to answer your questions. We appreciate you understanding that our meetings might be a little short because of the amount of work that we're doing. And the quick pace that it is, but especially on the weekends, like if it would be helpful for us to have another one of these for you and a group, a civic group or educational group or whatever, we can do that. And we can, of course, do this in the interim at even longer time and more specific to give you an update after session to do that. So just want to make sure that I hit on all of the things. I did. I don't see, thank you all for your compliments. This is actually my pleasure. We love doing things like this because I'm not supposed to come here to Richmond and do things in secret. Like I'm supposed to come here and work with you as a team to get the changes that we need and deserve in our community. So I really do appreciate the comments. I will definitely share them with the staff because they are amazing. I want to thank Cheyenne and Tempest, especially for staying late tonight so that we could share this with you. With that, we're going to close. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening, a great rest of your week. And I really do hope that you will follow us, that you'll watch the video, that you'll see what we're talking about with these meetings, and advocate for your priorities. Thank you. Have a good night.